Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nev, and good morning, everyone. For those of you that are here for the last talk, I work very near to Amit, so I work in the rich, healthy part of Sussex, according to his definition. But wherever you work, general practice is looking after patients, and looking after patients is the key for us all. I'm here to talk about a project that I've been running for a number of years, and I hope you'll find it actually interesting and think, well, actually there are things that we can do differently that actually traditionally has been done in hospitals and doesn't need to be done in hospitals. And apologies because I haven't got my notes because the slide doesn't allow me to see them, but we'll go through it. So ultrasound is what I was going to talk about. Now, as with any new service, I think you have to look at what services locally are not being provided in the best way for your patients. Where are the frustrations? What are the things that actually get in the way of patient care? And for us, this was many years ago in previous government's changes to the health service, back in the days of fund holding, we looked at ultrasound as being an area where we could make a difference. We were faced with long waits for various tests, bureaucracies telling us you can't have this test, you can't do that as a GP, and that led to us looking at where we could go for the future. So I think the key thing with any new service is actually it's focused on the people that matter, which is actually the patients. It's important that as GPs we run our own businesses, so that they are a business. So I think helping patients helps our businesses, and that's the way I think we all should look at it. So the desire there is to provide better services, access to services like echocardiography. We're talking about 1996 here, so that may seem quite strange in this day and age that we didn't have access to echocardiography, but for our patients the access was about 6 months wait and driving about 20 miles to actually get to a hospital. So we wanted to change that, and we were able to with the help of the service as it was then. In any time in the health service, there are always opportunities. There are different opportunities at different times, and they will change. As long as we remain adaptable, then you can hopefully introduce changes which actually make a difference. Ultrasound was chosen because at the time ultrasounds were available. They were technology which wasn't hugely expensive, didn't require any special building like X-rays or MRI scanners or anything like that. They were relatively mobile, and that comes back to looking at what services you want to use. That nowadays you can get ultrasounds or you can get echocardiography on a laptop like this. We have a company that comes into our surgery doing that now, because that's how that's developed. But you also have the more traditional sort of movable machines, which are what actually we use in our practice. So the cost of equipment was there. In those days, back in 1996, this was paid through fund holding savings. For those of you who weren't around in fund holding days, it actually was savings on patient care that you were then able to put back into patient care. So it's actually not that different concept to what Amit was talking about, CCGs, making savings from care and then investing that in something for the future. So that's helped to pump prime our original ultrasound machine. Since then we've purchased, we're onto our third machine now over the last 16 years. And the cost of that are taken up in the money that is charged for the scans and the profitability of the service. So once you take the plunge, then there is a service to be held and to be made, and money to be made for them services. Ultrasound for me was a good service to look at because it was a very frequent service, a service I was used to requesting. I had no experience of actually doing any ultrasound in general practice. As Nev will remember, the ultrasound when we started was a very strange little thing that you just saw these little pictures which you were told, oh yes, that's this and that's that, and you said, oh yes, that's right, oh I can see that, and it still hasn't changed a great deal. It's very much it's in the eye of the beholder, the person who's interpreting it. But it's a good service. We use it for so much more now than we've ever used it before. Musculoskeletal problems, all sorts of things. And actually that it's because it's now more readily available that actually you can use it. So a service that's going to be used frequently means that it's going to be more profitable. So I'll just go through some of the things, and obviously hopefully you have access to all these slides later on, just to give you a flavour of what we're going to do. So who's going to manage the service? I'm a GP. I felt that to provide this service, I wanted control over that service. I wanted to be managing it in a way that actually made it easy for me as a GP, my colleagues as a GP. This was started off just within our practice originally. Then again, with the change of the health service, it then became our town-wide project. Then it became the PCG, which we were providing the service to that. So, and that's where we are now, about 100,000 patients, which I'll come on later, providing a service to them. So if GPs are going to manage it, you need to think about where your skills are in that. I think this service requires you to having specialists doing the scans, ultrasonographers, consultants. When I first started, there was quite a vogue for GPs doing ultrasound, and I think that potentially has a role if people want to do that. But I always felt that actually I have better skills to actually provide patient care than actually doing ultrasound, because it needs to be done regularly by people who are doing it regularly. And in this day and age, with all the various professional bodies involved, it would be very difficult, I think, to do it as a GP on your own. So use people's skills. We use consultants and ultrasonographers locally who work in the local trust. They know the area, we know them. The people who are getting the reports recognise the names, which so often with lots of services that is changing. Do you set it up? The private company bit is not actually you could ask a private company to set it up for you, but that I think defeats the objects. There was just a comment that whether you set it up that your practice provides this service, or whether you set it up as a separate company provides that service, like a private company. We call ourselves Part of Surgery Ultrasound. We're not a separate company. We're part of the general practice business. But you could be, and that might be something to do. As I say, current providers of diagnostic imaging, you might ask them to set up a service. That might be a way for you to gain some knowledge about how to actually do this service and think, actually, yeah, I can do this. It's about organising people to come for appointments. It's about getting reports done and getting the reports back to GPs, which is a lot of what we do every day. You see people, you manage their problem, you take things on from there. So, what services do you provide? There's a whole wealth of services you can provide for ultrasound. When we started, I wanted to provide all of this, and we did for a while, but then with the whims of the service, obstetrics were taken away from us, having introduced nuchal scanning to our area, which wasn't available. It was only available in London when we started. We were doing echocardiography again. That was taken away to be provided by a general company that flits in and flits out of general practice. I have my problems with that, because I think not because that's a service we lost, but I think it's a service that is no longer a local service, and I worry a lot about the rights and wrongs of trying to have services that cover whole areas that are the same for everywhere. They may be the same, which is good, but that doesn't necessarily make them the best. And I think variety is something which we lose at our peril. Anything really you want to do, you might want to set up your screening for aortic aneurysms, but that tends to be a national thing, so you're in trouble there if you want to do it locally. Who's going to perform the service? Well, I've gone through some of this. GPs with specialist skill, that's possible. It may have GP colleagues coming to practice who have done a lot of obstetric or gynecology, who therefore will be very happy to use the ultrasound machines. It depends on what facilities you have available locally. Getting a good relationship with the local consultants and ultrasonographers obviously is vital if you're going to provide a service like this. But also, I think it actually gives the clinical governance part of the service that actually makes sure that we're actually all doing what we should be doing. Where will you run the service from? We run it from our surgery. You could run it from anywhere. You could run it from various surgeries. This equipment is mobile. You could run it from somewhere else totally different. You could run it from one of the various shops that are all closing down in the high streets around here. So wherever you set it up, it needs to be accessible for patients. That's what's vital. Now, generally with the general practice, you have to be accessible for patients. That's really the reason for your work, really. So the surgery site has its advantages because you know the overheads. You're not introducing new overheads, but if you are, then you have to feed that into your calculations for how much it will cost. This is probably the most important part in many ways of the talk is who's going to pay for the service. If this day and age, there's no money for development unless you're actually saving money somewhere else. Any qualified provider status is very much what new services are going to. Again, we've just achieved that with our experience. I would be hesitant how someone who actually has never set up a service before could go through that process and actually make head nor tail of it, really, because it's quite a complex process. And again, my fear is that these complex processes are there for large organisations to provide care over a large area. And really, what I think we mustn't lose is that local care and that local adaptability. We don't necessarily need those services or those restrictions because you've got to do it county-wide. We're seeing the patients. We're getting direct feedback. We're much more of a local service. So I think it's what we have to deal with, but I think the powers that be need to think about how development may be stifled by such things, which is why I put about local agreements with clinical commissioning groups. I'd very much be keen and think that's a good idea that if local commissioning groups look at a service, think that it's not working, and actually if they've got people within their community who actually want to provide it in a different way, they actually look to try and encourage that. Whether they're able to do that is obviously another question. So just briefly, and I'm almost at the end now, so get ready, Simon. So this service is 1996 to refund holding savings, as we said, and now 2013 we provide general adult and child ultrasound to GPs covering say 10,000 patients. I feel we provide a good service. The standards our AQP has stipulated is 15 working days for routine ultrasound, 5 for urgent ultrasounds. Now we're providing that. Interestingly, opportunities that are there, our local providers didn't get their AQP status. So our current two of our main trusts no longer do ultrasound for general practice. We weren't quite expecting them to disappear out of the scenario. So I think that gave the CCG headaches, and we had concerns. Well, how are we going to try and cope with this workload? Now it's actually happened because these other providers from all over the country have come in and actually are providing this service on a Tuesday, on a Thursday, as Amit said earlier on. And again, I wonder how regular that is and how people will trust that service. So back to the important thing, patients. We've got to make sure we maintain the service for them and for our GPs. So profitability, don't let's put too many figures down, but yeah, 20% of our turnover is profit to our general practice, and that's been more or less the same sort of over those 16 years. The beauty for this for me is that I'm doing a bit of management work, but I'm not having to do the actual work. The ultrasonographers, the consultants do the work. The practice as a whole does all the administration work. So practice is, for us, we've got an income without me having to be seeing patients. I can still be seeing my patients, and the income is still there, provided the service is working. And of course, you need to keep an eye on that. So, nearly there. Threats and concerns. Yeah, I've alluded to this already. I think it's important. I feel the local services are important. Local services mean that you will get different services in one part and down to another part. Now that may be because those local areas need different services, and that's what I would argue, that actually you provide the services that work locally. If you're in an environment where the nearest DGH is that's a very old term, but is 20 miles away, then you'll provide a very different sort of general practice to one where it's on your doorstep, and you need different services. So. AQP process stifling development of local providers, so that's certainly a threat. But if I can, I want to try and enthuse you to actually do something different, innovate, because the NHS needs that, and I think it needs people who are working with the NHS to do that. External companies are good, and they have their values, but I think people who are working in the service know what the ethos of the NHS is. And I think we're in a better place to move it forward. So, thank you.
David, thank you. Do you want to come and have a seat? So we'll take some questions at the end, but thank you very much for that. So next up is Simon Gilbert, a GP from South West London, Merton to be precise, who's going to talk about how he's developed and marketed non-NHS services from his practice. Thank you, Simon.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? So I'm going to, we're running a little bit late. I want time for questions, so I'm going to crack on through and get to the meat of this talk, which is about private non-NHS services. So these are services that are facing the consumer, the patient. Just a quick show of hand, who is offering any kind of private services at the moment? And who is interested or hopes to? Okay, great. So you're in the right talk. Now I'm going to go through this. Why pursue non-NHS income? This is from tax returns, so it's not necessarily completely representative of the situation. It could be that all GPs have invested in fine wine, and that's gone down over the last 8 years or so. But we all know that actually PMS, GMS income in real terms is falling significantly. Private healthcare industry is large, and roughly £388 per person spent on private treatment. The interesting bit is halfway down, of the 5 to 7 billion on procedures, private acute care in hospitals or clinics, about 15% was self-funded. So that's not through insurance. So the reasons to pursue non-NHS income, well, one is just because our income's falling. The other reasons I think are important is that I actually think a little bit of private work in your practice can improve your own practice. It means your receptionists, your admin have to be more customer focused, and I'm never quite sure whether it's called a customer or patient, but let's say patient focused. And they have to kind of develop those skills, because it's very apparent when someone's coming to pay for a procedure or pay to see you, you need to be on the ball with that, because it's not, you're not providing, you might always provide a fantastic NHS service, but I think sometimes that can slip by the wayside by the very nature of that free at the point of use transaction. So I think a little bit of that in the practice can be useful learning for everyone. I think it helps your resilience as well as a practice, because it will help you in the future, respond to any kind of changes that mean we have to be more aware of these issues. So what skills, assets and talents do you have in general practice? I think we have loads of skills that we don't always put a value on, because we're used to kind of giving them away for free, or for our kind of charity NHS work. We're multi-talented. We do lots of things already. Okay, we already have a premises, we already have a building, we have a business, we have a track record. We know what's going on. We may have CQC in place already. We know a local area, and we listen to patients. All of that is vitally important, because that's where you're going to get your ideas from. That's where you're going to use your own assets to provide private services. I'm going to talk about what we did when we set up yourdoctor.co.uk, which is an umbrella organisation and sites for lots of small things we were doing. So we had a brainstorming session. I'm sure you'll be able to get hold of the slides. If not, I can email them to you. But all the things on here, travel, minor surgery, private GP, sexual health, men's health, occupational health, we talked through and looked at all those things and thought of what things we wanted to provide more of. So, for example, we were already providing yellow fever vaccines, but weren't publicising it. We were already doing minor surgery in-house, but not privately. But patients were asking for things like where could they get a little sebaceous cyst on their back taken out. This isn't heavy cosmetic work, it's something that's not funded by a lot of PCTs anymore. We looked at a few other things like finasteride for hair loss after someone's wife told my wife that his husband was quoted £3,000 in a central London clinic, basically for a prescription for this. We put that by the wayside, and that was part of our own kind of thoughts about risks, benefits, and what's appropriate. Also marketing our unused clinical rooms and various kind of online escapades we're planning. So what did we do? The main issue was we had all these small things. We didn't know what would work or what we should focus on. So the idea was to come up with a brand for the whole thing, and we called it yourdoctor.co.uk, and we set up a website. And the idea is that we can lead people into the website through advertising, and they can click through to whatever service you're providing. And it just means that's there, that infrastructure is there to deal with any service we want to try out. We didn't have to set up a massive infrastructure. We could do it on a kind of incremental level, which was key, given we are GPs, and that's our main job. But we wanted to do a bit of extra work. When you get the slides, or if you get the slides, I'm leaving you really with a bit of a checklist, because none of this is rocket science, but it's nice to know someone who's done a bit of it before. And so there's two checklists here. One is the preparation checklist. It's all there. You can have a look at it. I'm not going to speak through it because we're running a bit late. CQC, we've had a back and forth with them, and it depends who you ask on any given day. But they seem to say that if it's things you're already doing in your NHS practice and you're CQC approved, they're happy for you to be doing that privately. We were asking about other people doing that privately, and I think you just need to ask them yourself and get it down in a correspondence. But we seem to be able to do that. It was important to have a separate organisation. We didn't want it under the same organisation as our GP practice name, just to be really clear about what's private and what's not. Now, marketing. One of the key messages is you don't need to spend £10,000 on a massive advertising campaign on the tube to start a private service. Google is your friend. You can go for pay-per-click marketing, which is basically only paying if someone searches for what you're advertising and they click on it and go to your website. So we've set up a lot of that under the Your Doctor brand, trying out different things like sebaceous cyst. If someone searches for that, South London, they'll come up with an advert for Your Doctor. We also are going up what's called the organic searches, so we don't just appear in the paid adverts bit. But this is really key, because you can decide just to spend £1 or £2 a day marketing a service and evaluate it after a few months to see if it's worth ramping that up. And that's what we did with some of our occupational health, travel, and minor surgery. So here, ingrowing toenail surgery. This actually got quite a few hits. So the other good thing you can do is you can compare what the best thing to advertise for is. So put a few pound a day on ingrown toenail surgery. Actually, quite a lot of people are interested in it. We do it already in minor surgery. And we're happy to provide it to people. And people are paying to come and have this done because there's no time, or they want it done quicker than on the NHS, or there's funding issues. And that, again, that came from a patient who wanted their ingrown toenail done quicker than the 3 or 4 weeks I could offer on the NHS, and they said they'd been quoted £900 elsewhere at a private hospital. I couldn't do that patient because they were my own patient, but it's just ideas you can think of. Okay, again, another checklist, a marketing checklist. Basically, find a web geek or become one. I found it useful to become a bit of a web geek, because then you understand what you're asking for, what you want. When you set up a website, get someone to do it, the content is important. So you can get them to make it look nice, but you have to do the content. And you can look at my website, look at other websites, see what makes sense. But the most important thing is the patient or potential patient customer needs to get the information they need within about 5 seconds. And again, we use Google for advertising, and it works well, and I turn it off when I go on holiday, and I don't get as many inquiries. But even when I forget to turn it back on, I still get natural search inquiries. I think we're running a bit out of time, so I don't want to go into much more detail. There's 2 more slides. One is about values and ethics. I think whatever you do in private practice, you need to be aware of your core values. So our core values are providing good quality healthcare. And I think if you have that there explicitly, it helps you manage any situation you might arise. For example, if you've got somebody who wants to rent a room who's wants to provide some kind of wacky weight loss treatment with unlicensed drugs or something, you can take that step back and say, actually, this doesn't fit in with our values and ethics. And I think it's really important to keep that. The other issue around that is be aware of kind of guidance from GMC, and there is guidance about private work. Basically, the spirit of the law is that it's not like the insurance industry for cars where you have bundles of incentives to refer elsewhere. Sometimes I do, it is strange when you see my NHS patients being bounced from consultant to consultant privately, but we can't do that. But what you can do is be upfront. If you have a cost for something, you can say, this is the person doing it, this is what the breakdown is, even if it's someone coming in to do the procedure through your organisation. Here I put iterative improvement and evaluation, just to evaluate it. Some of the marketing tools allow you to do that. So you can work out how much you're making, whether it's worth it. But the beauty of a kind of web-based approach is it's only people searching for this who are coming to your site. So you're not putting adverts on the tube saying make your life fantastic with whatever it is. So you can be happy with that. And also you've got the tools to work out if it's worthwhile. I think my final thing is opportunities, and I think you always need to look for opportunities. When I thought of Your Doctor, really the key was not to make it a local named site for services. It is an umbrella net that can be expanded. We've had patients coming for cyst removals from Dorset and other places just because we can offer the value because we have all our fixed costs and we're not a private hospital. We're always looking for people who might be interested to use our kind of marketing base to set up a service elsewhere in the country, travel, minor surgery, occupational health. I'm going to leave it there so that hopefully we have a few minutes for questions.
Thank you, Simon. Come and have a seat, Simon. So I'm sure you're cogitating over some questions. Both Simon and David are going to be available during coffee. So if you don't get a chance to ask something now, please get them in a minute or two. So should we just take just 2 questions? These 2 hands have gone up. So and then we'll leave the rest of you to find these 2 for additional questions in the coffee break. Could you just introduce yourself? Brief question.
Yeah. I'm Dr. Ashok Deshpande, a GP with special interest in urology, working in Hornchurch. A question to David Hall is that, first thing is that, are you on the CCG board?
No.
That's good. So that, how did you deal with the conflict of interest? Because otherwise would have been a big problem.
Yes, I think you're right. Conflict of interest, that's one of my fears of, that holds back innovation because you have so much, as GPs, if you're developing a service, then the CCG almost doesn't want to look at that because the conflict of interest. Now, our service started way before this, so therefore we didn't have that issue. But that is a problem. Now, one of my partners is on the CCG board, so yes, any discussion about that had to be separate. The AQP process is a national process, so that actually takes out a lot of the problems with that, because it's other people making that decisions. Because you have to apply to be a provider of whatever care, ultrasound, dermatology, whatever.
Thank you, David. And the question from the back there.
Thank you, Kate Davenport, practice manager. Simon, tell me about you not being able to treat your own patients. We've run up against this. We can't find a way around it. We're a rural practice. We're not in the middle of a town where you've got a whole lot of other practices' patients to treat. I'm really impressed that you're getting patients from Dorset, but I bet you didn't to start with. And how do you get round the fact that actually the people who've got these cysts that need removing are your patients and you want it doing now?
Okay, so I'm going to be clear, and I think Nav's just written what I was going to say on a piece of paper. It says you can't. So we can't treat our own patients for private things, and we don't. We're situated in South London, so we've got a massive potential catchment area, and the main issue is that things like, for example, minor surgery is cut in various different localities. So that's where we get some of our business from. We can compete a bit on cost on the things we can do appropriately because we have all the infrastructure in place already, and that's, I guess, what we're leveraging on that service. But essentially, you can't. I suppose there could be signposting, but you've got to be very kind of careful around there. I would be careful about that.
Okay, thank you all so much for listening. Coffee outside, and just to remind you, there are some regional networks. The next one is for the South East region at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much for listening.